This program is designed to provide general information with regards to the subject matters covered. This information is given with the understanding that neither the hosts, guests, sponsors, or station are engaged in rendering any specific and personal, medical, financial, legal, counseling, professional service, or any advice. You should seek the services of competent professionals before applying or trying any suggested ideas.
Hey there, it's Brian Sebastian, movie reviews and more, live on K4HD radio and podcasting, Talk Radio, TV, radio, and podcasting, and iHeartRadio, Spotify, Pandora, Apple, all around the world, over 100 outlets and more. And streaming live on Worldwide TV Network, IT247 out of Franklin, Tennessee, and WomenOnTV.tv. So this is big, and we call it big because it's big Part 2. So waiting for David Vonnor to come on, and I think Helen Smith is going to jump on also. So kicking this off, we got Terry Marie in Nonstop in Laguna Beach, California, and we got Chef Rachel Roberts out of Houston, Texas. So with this, since it's ladies' night, and I'm calling it ladies' night, and I see that smile, that beautiful smile already. Adrienne Smith, we got to start with you. Who are you, and where are you coming from?
Oh my goodness, I am Adrienne Smith. I bring you greetings from New York City, the Big Apple. And I am the inventor of the phenomenal football card game called Blitz Champz. I'm so excited to be here.
All right. And next, Mason Williams, because all you guys are big. What are you doing? What's happening with you? Go ahead, go for it.
All right. Well, thank you for having me, first and foremost. My name is Mason Williams. I'm the global head of diversity, equity, and inclusion for Mattel. I've also worked in the toy industry for about 25 years. I helped launch a group called Connected Play at Mattel, where we are bridging physical toys with digital applications. Started back in 2012, and have evolved into the role I hold now. And I'm happy to be here with all these folks and see some of my old friends.
Exactly. All right. I think Ken is coming in now, but I'm going to come to in a minute. All right, Jeffrey, go ahead. You got a very interesting career. Go ahead.
What did you say? I have what?
You got a very interesting career.
Oh, I guess you could say that. My name is Jeffrey Trimmingham. I'm here representing Charles Harrison, and I guess myself also. Charles and I worked together for more than 20 years to help publish his story. He, you might know, was the designer of the Viewmaster back in the late 1950s, which became a huge seller, but he designed more than 700 products over the course of his career, a lot of which sold massive numbers all over the country and all over the world. So I'm glad to be here. Look forward to the conversation.
And I think we're looking for Ken, and we're waiting for David to come on. So while we're waiting, Nonstop, tell them who you are so you can get a chance. Go for it.
Oh, hi, guys. This is Terry Marie. I'm out of Redondo Beach, California. I've been Brian's co-host for over 7 years now. Red carpet interviewer, fitness competitor, enthusiast, and now NFT creator. So more of that to come. That will be released at the end of June. So happy to be here with everybody.
Right on.
And Rachel Roberts, go ahead. Go for it.
Hello, I am Rachel Roberts. I'm in Houston, Texas, and every morning I have a little show called Coffee Talk, and I am one of Brian's co-hosts as well. Thank you, Brian, for having me. And I do recipes. I'm a little home chef, so I do cooking videos. Today I brought crawfish because it's crawfish season right now, and in Houston we love crawfish. In Chinatown, one of the things I got turned on to in Houston, and a lot of people don't do this, it's a sauce that is mayonnaise based that you mix lemon and you mix like slap your mama and you got some salt and pepper and it's delicious. Once you have and some hot sauce, once you dip your crawfish in that, you don't ever want to do anything else. So and then I always make a cocktail because my whole thing is eat clean, drink a little dirty. So my cocktail today is a lemon drop martini, but even my cocktails are still going to be clean. I don't want to eat anything that's going to kill me. So we got some lemon, some vodka, and this simple, a simple syrup, but no sugar. It's made with RX sugar, and y'all write that down because that's a good one to keep. And then I wanted to share with you, I also grow everything in my garden, and that's where I get inspiration on things I like to cook. So these are just a few of the things that I picked today. We got lots of tomatoes and lots of beautiful peppers and a lot of hot things because I like things with, a little kick because I'm in Texas and that's what we do.
And now that everybody's hungry and starving and needs a drink. So Adrienne, let's talk about this. You're very iconic of what you're doing. I couldn't be more happier for you. Talk about how you started, because there's a lot of people that don't know your story that need to know your story.
Thank you so much, Brian. So yeah, I'm a bit unique. I happen to be a professional women's tackle football player, hence the helmets. So I have won 2 gold medals playing tackle football as part of the U.S. women's national tackle football team. That's over here. And then I currently play for the Boston Renegades, and we are the 6-time women's national championships here in the States. And I like to tell people, Brian, that the only person who has more championship rings than I do is Tom Brady, but that's about to change, okay? He's got 7, I have 6, and I'm coming for him. So our championship will actually be broadcast live July 10th on ESPN2, so keep your eyes out for the Boston Renegades. So, my love for football, it just it extended for me into creating Blitz Champz. I love the passion. I love the excitement. I love the strategy that goes into playing football. And as an entrepreneur, I wanted to bring all of those elements into the home, into the classroom. I wanted to create a different medium in which the fun and excitement of football could be experienced. And that's what happened in 2015 when I invented Blitz Champz.
Right on. Right on.
Talk about your first obstacle. What was your first obstacle as being that woman, being that pretty woman of color, and being tackled and running and all that stuff? Because that doesn't make sense.
Well, you know what? I like to say, and I've got a couple of ladies on here as well, and not that I've had kids, but I think child labor is pretty demanding, So, sometimes people like to think of women as these little dainty objects that should never be crushed or harmed or are too delicate. And I'm thinking, well, the entire population of planet Earth wouldn't exist if it were not for the strength and the fortitude and the physicality of women. So this is just another way for us to experience and to enjoy life. And for me, from the age of 3, I have loved football. My parents told me I used to set up my teddy bear Ginger. I don't know why I called him Ginger. He was a boy, but his name was Ginger. I would set Ginger up in front of the TV on Sundays, and we would watch football together. And I would just run and tackle Ginger. And
my
from that point on, my parents, they realized I had an interest, and I was so blessed. I was so blessed to have parents that did not prevent me from doing something because of my gender or because of my color. They encouraged me to believe and to pursue anything I wanted to. So when I was 7, I remember my dad, he bought me a football for Christmas. He taught me how to throw a perfect spiral. And no one knew there would be a national team for women's tackle football. No one knew there would be a flag football team. So in 2013, I created one of my other companies called Gridiron Queendom for the sole purpose of supporting and promoting women and girls around the world who play football, whether it's flag football or tackle football. I wanted to be the creator of a safe space for these girls and women because, unfortunately, we're still getting bullied. There are actually still people out there that want to prevent little girls from playing a particular game. It's just mind-boggling. So, if they want to prevent you from doing something, then you do it extra. And that's what I did by creating Blitz Champz as well. Not only is it a super fun game just for people who love football, but it's also being used as a math learning tool in elementary and middle schools throughout the United States.
Terry, what do you think about that? Terry?
Well, I couldn't hear. What was your question? You were muffled a
What do you
little.
think about that?
I'm sorry?
What do you think about that?
Oh, well, I think it's pretty neat. I mean, for me, I was on the other. I mean, I was a cheerleader, so I always liked football, obviously in high school. But I've always been athletic. Obviously, that's where I started in weight training, so I can relate to her what she's saying with women of strength, because women aren't supposed to lift heavy weights, and that's my thing. So that's how I, stay healthy and stay strong. So, I mean, I love it.
Right on.
Mason, talk about what you have going up, because you're in BIGG. It's about inventors. It's about entrepreneurs and CEOs. Go ahead.
Yeah. So it's interesting. First of all, the BIGG has changed my life, and it's changed my life in a lot of ways. I'll tell you, because I've been in the toy industry forever. And when I first met, James Howard and the whole crew, Jeffrey, we were there together. Ken, who's going to join later, David Vonnor, everyone from last week. I was brought in as a person who's in the toy industry at the largest toy company in the world right now, and I work at Mattel. I started my career as a designer, as a person who wrote trivia, wrote sports trivia. I was before that I was an athlete and sports writer, and I've stumbled into the toy industry. And of course, like most other things, I was always the only black dude in the room. And then I started when I was at Mattel. I created a group. I was with a group of people who created what they call connected play, like I mentioned a little earlier. It's a brand new field of the toy industry, and it's interesting because Jeffrey and I have a connection because Charles Harrison, who he talks about, designed the Viewmaster. I designed the software and led the software development when we brought Viewmaster into virtual reality and augmented reality. But my major life mission has always been to be about representation and making sure that we can pass forward something else that other people, so that those of us who are on this call aren't the only people in the room when we start to talk about these things. Yeah. So as in 2020, we start to see, like what I would say, a social awakening for a lot of people. For a lot of us, it's not much of an awakening. We're awake. So, but I was able to move myself into a position as a toy person and a person who had showed his commitment to the toy culture and the culture of Mattel. I was able to move myself into the role of leading diversity, equity, inclusion for Mattel as a global community. And when I say a global community, I'm talking about the increased representation of us, like when we talk about BIGG and Black folks, but I'm also here to represent other underrepresented groups and make sure that all start to rise. As the tide rises, all ships should rise. What diversity means here in the United States is different from what it means in Latin America, is different from what it means in Europe and Asia and Africa. But my mission is to make sure that we're seeing equity across the board globally, and also keeping the theme of what is the theme for toys. The theme of toys is to create the wonder of childhood. And the wonder of childhood is not for and make the greatest toys on earth. The greatest toys on earth do not have a parenthetical next to them saying, I make the greatest toys on earth for only you. That's not how it goes. It's about making it for everyone, accessibility. So I use my position now as to be a part of that. And honestly, being a part of BIGG was a huge boost for our company because Mattel has invested in the production. James has brought me on to be what I would say a consultant and a participant, which I'm very thankful of. But also, it's to do the right thing. And when you do the right thing, good business can be done. They're not at odds.
Joffrey, talk about everything that goes on now. Talk about being with the son of Charles. That's really, really important.
Yeah, Chuck marched in a road that almost no one had ever trod before. So if you think about, let's go back to the 1950s. Hard to imagine for most of us, right? Here's a black guy who is trying to get into the toy industry, into the into the design industry, and there's no one who's ever looked like him in that before. He met with a lot of resistance. He met with a lot of heartache. He met with a lot of challenges. But the one thing that he really talked about is being able to walk the walk, to be excellent at your craft, and then to be able to have perseverance to get where you need to go. So I feel as though I was really privileged to work with him for the time that I did. I met him literally the day before I graduated from college. Had a conversation with him, and I was like, "You do what for a living?" And he said, "Well, I design stuff for a living." I said, "Why have I never heard of this before?" And that began a really long and fantastic relationship between the two of us. Chuck, he passed away about 3 years ago, and he had a real vision for what he was trying to do with his life. He always said, "My goal is to make a contribution," right? And you think about all the work that he did, he made a massive contribution, but he was still thinking about a contribution at the end of his life. And his thing, this goes to what Mason was saying, and really also to what Adrienne's saying. His goal was really to make sure that everyone who had an interest and an inclination and the gift to be able to succeed in this space could find it, number one, which is tough to do for a lot of people, to get into it and succeed. And so I'm here representing him to make sure that anyone who hears this and says, "You know, I've never heard about designing stuff like toys or lawnmowers or sewing machines or whatever," who hears it can say, "I want to check that out to find out what it is so I can be part of that."
Give the audience an example of some of the things that he's created.
Oh my gosh. All right. So the thing he was really the most proud of, he would people used to laugh when he said this, but he would say, I was most proud of the garbage can that I created. So most people don't think about this. On the cover of this book back here, I'll just bring it up here a second. So this little garbage can right here was the first of its kind plastic garbage can ever created in the world, in the history of the world. That man sat down with a chemist and a buyer in a lunchroom and came up with this idea. And over the course of 2 or 3 weeks, developed a product that you now see versions of it everywhere in the world. If you look at a garbage cart that's in your driveway, for instance, right? The one with the wheels, that's kind of rectangular, got a lid on it that stays on it, etc. Well, he designed the first version of that back in 1963. And that was a game changer for the world, if you think about it. Anywhere you go in the world, you're going to see that thing, right? He designed more than 100 sewing machines over the course of his career, everything from little tiny sewing machines that could be packed by a flight attendant to take with them on a journey across the world. They could carry this little tiny sewing machine with them and do things like repair clothes or create clothes from scratch, to industrial sewing machines. We had a really interesting visit at Virginia Tech. They have an industrial design department there years ago, and we were walking through, kind of talking to the students, talking to the faculty, and he looked out of the corner of his eye and he said, "Wait a second, I know that thing." So he looked over to the side and he saw this sewing machine that he designed back in the 1970s that was still there in their shop working, right? And so this man, literally, when I say he designed more than 700 products, he designed himself more than 700 products in all different spaces, from parts of vehicles to desks to sewing machines to power saws to blenders to hair bonnets to you name it. He had some hand in it one way or another. Really amazing.
Rachel, what do you think about that?
Well, you know what? I think that's incredible. I did have a question. I keep floating in my mind. I've got 2 kids and they're really big. And I know my question is, how do you keep up with, kids nowadays? It's like they play with toys to a certain age and now they're switching over to the electronics. How do you guys keep up with what's going on in the world and this movement, this shift, like with all these kids, they want to do the electronics and they're like, they get away from the toys. How do you guys keep up with, do you make a toy that is connecting to the electronics? What do you do?
So I could take that, because one, I think there's slight misnomer that if we think about the sales of toys right now and the sales of games, it's actually bigger than it's ever been. So there's actually more people gravitating back to the idea of tactile physical play. But how do we do that? Meet kids where they are. So in the appropriate spaces, there are ways to make connected toys, but those toys need to be thought of like technology is not the what I would say the feature. Technology is an amplifier of the play that exists. So I would say like something like this. I worked on a project called Pictionary Air, and it won the Game of the Year in 2020. And if I say Pictionary to all of you know what Pictionary is, right? And if I said Pictionary Air is I hold a pen in the air and draw in space, and your phone tracks what it's doing, you would understand that. It's not a technology toy. It's just a different way of amplifying the play in a different space. So what needs to be done in order to meet kids and meet not just kids, but anyone who's a fan. When I say kids, I say anyone from 0 to death. You know what I mean? So the way that we start to think about it is meet people where they're at to amplify the experiences that they have. And I'll go back to what you said about there's also what I would say another movement that says, hey, kids are so much on their screen and doing this so much, right? They're on the screen. Parents who are millennials and eventually coming closer to Gen Z and whatnot, there's actually what I would call not a backlash. That's not a good word to use, but I would say a counter movement that says, hey, you know what? I value tactile play and I want you to play. I want you to learn. And so when I look at Adrienne and her and the game she's created, it's about connection with each other and actually inspiring the imagination. When we're on a device and whatnot, mostly it's a passive interaction because all the imagination is being fed to you. But when we're in a room, like let's go back to like something that's even culturally appropriate for all of us. If you play spades or you play dominoes, the game is a facilitation for the actual interaction for people. And so the idea that we become segmented into only our own space is something that parents and kids also know, especially given the last couple of years that we've been in a pandemic and people have been isolated from each other. The need to connect, the need to feel that tactile, actual human connection is what actually fuels where I think that's why we see the toy industry has had some of its largest years ever. So it's actually, we're seeing what I would call a balancing act of design for the future and technology and people where they are, and understand that there is a core human need to be tactile, to be together.
Yeah, be social.
And Rachel, if I could jump in. Mason, I want to cut you off. If I could jump in. It's a great question and something that I found parents, the reason they really gravitate towards Blitz Champz is because I've been able to take that, if you want to call it the video game, football kind of genre, and bring it into the three-dimensional world where kids and families are playing together. They're interacting together. And it's been a while since there's been a new card game that allows face-to-face interaction. So one of the most common responses I get from parents and from kids is like, oh my gosh, we're like playing together. Like my friend is here and I'm playing with my friend. Or the parents and the grandparents are saying, thank goodness, you know, he's not looking at that screen, or she put the iPad down. So to Mason's point, I think there is a balance, and it's up to us game inventors to, you know, create new methodologies, new concepts that can not necessarily shun or say, oh, technology is bad, but kind of go back to those grassroots of face-to-face interaction and socialization.
Exactly, Adrienne. Like technology. But I was just saying, technology is not a feature. It's literally an amplification. It's a tool. And when we think about things, we're like, oh, it's got to be a tech enabled. No, nobody. You didn't buy your phone because it has Bluetooth. That's not a feature. That's just what it is. And so when I start to think about it like that, when we amplify core play values, core play aspects, core play modalities, like Adrienne's saying, that's a good way to use technology. And then also you get a better appreciation for actual tactile play, passing the card, just doing stuff offline, being in your mind. the best internet I have is here. Straight up.
Aw. That's awesome.
Now, did we lose Helen? Did Helen jump back in? So, let me ask you this. Roxy and Terry and Rachel, what was your first game that you played as girls?
My first game, like a board game or sports?
First thing off the top of your head.
Oh my God. Come back to me. I can't even think of anything right now.
Rachel,
I used to, yes, yeah, can you hear me? We had lots of dogs and pets growing up, and I was an only child. So I would dress up the dogs. I would take off the dolls' clothes and put them on the dogs. And it's actually kind of sad. By the way, Adrienne, my dad coached football. He would have loved you. If I were like that as a daughter. He tried sitting me down, oh my God, so many times to watch football. But I was like Terry. I was doing the cheerleading, and I was like, yeah. My dad would have loved that.
I was athletic though. I mean, I was in the swim team also in high school.
Me too. Swim team. Yeah.
So I did swimming, and I did actually
I'm
started
still
getting
waiting for your toy.
college. What?
I'm still waiting for the toy, Terry. What was the toy?
The toy? Barbie dolls, I guess. I don't know. I was really into Barbie dolls when I was a kid, and my dad gave me a dollhouse. No,
I remember games
Mason's
like
going like-
Candyland.
Hey, yo, you just made my job easier.
I remember games like Candyland.
My dad actually built me a Barbie house from scratch. He's from one because I wanted one of those big Barbie houses, and my dad was really creative. He was an artist, and he spent like every weekend creating this big house. I still have it at my mom's house. It's pretty neat. But as far as games,
wow.
As far as games, the only game I can think is I played a lot of games with kids like at recess. I remember playing Red Rover.
Oh yeah.
I don't know if anybody remembers that game. And Duck Duck Goose. Well, I think that you'd go around chairs, you go Duck Duck Goose. I can't remember exactly how you played it, but we played all those silly things.
All right, Roxy, what was your first game? She's behind the scenes.
I remember Candyland and Snakes and Ladders, and I remember the Jax game. I remember Pogs. Pogs were amazing. I loved Pogs.
Mason,
yours. Video game. I can say my first video game was Pac-Man. So.
Mason, yours.
First game, I started playing gin rummy with my grandma when I was like 5. Wow. And
exactly.
I come from like old school family. Yeah, but like I started playing when I was 5. But honestly, like as a kid, I started doing martial arts when I was 5 years old, and I'm 47 now, so I've done it 42 years or whatnot. And so that to me was like that's my thing that I've done my entire life. I went to Olympic trials, or I did the whole way. So that was like actually like the foundation of who I became now. You know, it's like I look at Adrienne again, like in kind of in awe. Like, you know, you talk about your journey as an athlete to being a creator. There's an inexorable tie between those two things. The discipline that comes with it, the pure joy of still. I bet, Adrienne, I bet when I say this, you know, you could still feel 7 years old at any moment of your life when you catch the ball and you run. You're 7. When I do anything, I can rekindle that moment. And I think as a person who's worked in design and creativity and also bringing people together, being able to access that part that most people don't have is something that I consider to be a gift. So, but yeah, gin rummy, but my main thing, taekwondo, but also I'll tell you one other game that was really good. I played consistently. It's a Filipino card game called Pasoy Dos. I grew up in a neighborhood that was extremely, diverse. So Filipinos, Mexicans, black, white, everybody, we were together and we played, truth be told, we would gamble in like 7th, 8th grade at like, I'm trying to take cats' money, and also learn how to interact and talk a little shit, to be honest. You know what I mean?
John, for your
Oh man, I was into so many things. I started drawing when I was about 4 years old, and that was one of my jams for a very, very long time. I was really good at drawing, but anything that had to do with playing outside in the street or whatever. We had a great neighborhood. I was out there doing it. Kite making, plane flying, chasing kids around the street, bike riding, you name it, I was out there doing it. So in terms of games, my favorites of all time are Monopoly, which, everybody loves Monopoly. I love dominoes, but I just like playing and like being outdoors. That's my thing.
Hey, Roxy, you got to say something. What was it?
I was going to agree with the camping because it's something I did. I'd take my basset hound and go camping and out in the woods. I was 12, it was okay back then to go camping.
Exactly. See, mine was chess. I don't play the same chess game each. I play unorthodox chess. I see what other people can't see, and I used to beat all the white kids, and they couldn't figure out how I was beating them. I know. All right, so Helen, it's good to see you. Helen Harris, let's talk about you.
Yes.
What game did you create? Go for it.
Believe it, Tops in the streets, Jersey City. Tops.
Oh.
Tops
Wow.
and Jacks. Yeah, started out like that.
I love Jacks. Yeah.
Probably, I'm not too sure that any of you remember Jacks. But
I do. I play Jacks.
Yeah, Jacks in the street, yeah. And then I graduated to Bid Whist, played that through college, along with spades. And also, I like Scrabble. I love word games, naturally. Yeah.
Talk about that game over your left shoulder. How did that come about?
It came about as a result of, well, what happened was I always enjoyed word games. I enjoyed playing word games. And what happened was in 2016, my husband passed away. And I was looking for something to fill a void. This game came to me I would wake up at odd times at night. And one morning about 3 or 4 o'clock, I woke up and I wrote this game out completely along with another game. And then I delve into creating this particular game that came to me all at once. The whole game came to me except for the name. And so then I created a prototype and I went from there. This game was easier for me to implement than the second one that I had written out. But that's how it all came about. Yes.
All from one dream, right?
Well, yeah, from one. I would like when he passed away, I never thought I would make a game. I was never interested in creating a game, but I had spent most of my time for the last 2 years taking care of him. And after he passed, there was a void. And I felt that this filled the void, and it was cheaper than therapy.
That makes sense.
Yes.
So Mason and Joffrey, talk about this. What is it like to be big? What is it like to be in the Black Inventors Hall of Fame?
Mason, all right. So one of the things that was really cool, we met the first time in DC, maybe about a year ago, 9 months ago. And really seeing all of these folks like Lonnie Johnson and Lamont in the same room was amazing, because these are people who have spent years developing products that have really gone like bonkers in the world. If you think about what Lonnie's done with the Super Soaker and the Nerf gun, it's a dream that everyone has to be able to create a toy that does what that does. So hearing, though, the stories of these folks, what their experiences have been, both in terms of trying to get their products from their heads out into the world and into success, but also the struggles they faced as Black folks was doing that, whether it was in their careers or whether it was within the space of commerce or selling their products, getting their products out there and successful. Commonalities and the threads that they were sharing in that conversation were just amazing. I think Mason can point to that. One of the things that I heard Lonnie in particular really talk about that was really interesting was this idea that he was a really accomplished engineer working at NASA, had anything he wanted on his plate and decided that he wanted to pursue designing something, developing something for himself that he could bring into the world and do something bigger with. And he's gone on to do even more than that. So, it's a combination for me of sitting next to some folks who are doing just awesome stuff and seeing what's possible through their eyes. It makes me want to think about like the next big thing that I'm going to create, because I've got a lot of life left in me. So that's my thought about it. Really just a thrill to be sitting next to these folks and to hear what they have to say, to hear about their experiences, their perseverance, what they were able to overcome, and to be enlightened and enlivened by that.
Mason?
Yeah, I mean, I feel very similar to Jeffrey in a lot of ways, and in other ways, I feel, I never really thought of myself too much as being like important in the toy industry or anything. I just like kind of do things in life and go through and have become what I would say accustomed to being lonely, and like I'm the only black dude. It's cool, like whatever. I knew about Lonnie and I knew about Ken. But it wasn't anything that I felt a kinship to, because it was so far, and like almost like they're mythical figures to me. So I don't really believe in myths. But when I got there and I got to sit there and be like, oh shoot, I was talking to David Vonnor. And Vonnor said, "Yo, man, it's like we just got invited to the Justice League, And I said, man, yeah, I believe that too. But what if like Superman and Batman just showed up as well? Like we have to I think about things in the way that we contribute. I actually felt like I broke through my imposter syndrome a little bit, the things that hold me back in my life before, and seeing that there was actually, I could shake Lonnie's hand and I could talk to him and I could talk to Jeffrey and I could talk to Charlie Harrison about Chuck, and I could talk to, Elliot Eddie, and I could talk to everybody. It felt like a moment where literally the night that we had first met, I cried, like I went home, I went back to the hotel and I cried because it was like the first time I ever felt like, damn, there's there's other people out there like me, and to be on the other side of it also as a cat who's in the toy industry now. And there's a healthy skepticism amongst the people at BIGG when you hear it. The toy industry has not supported Black people. The toy industry has not diversified the way that it's needed to diversify over the course of generations. However, I sit in a position now as a running global diversity, equity, inclusion for the largest toy company, and not an HR professional and not having no acumen, if you would call it like acumen as far as education goes. I have experience. I know what it is to be diversity. I know what it is to have equity. I know what it is to be included. And I know, more importantly, I know what the lack of diversity, the lack of equity, and the lack of inclusion leads to. And so being a part of BIGG has meant a lot to me. It's actually, on a personal level, it's boosted my career a lot. And I didn't see that coming. And I'm happy to be a part of it. I feel honored that I'm considered to be in the room with these cats, but only thing it does to me is fuel me to keep going. Like Jeffrey said, like we got a lot more life to go, and foot on the gas.
Adrienne, what's it feel like to you?
It's absolutely extraordinary. So it reminds me, I was just thinking as Mason was talking about, in women's football and tackle football, there's an elite group of women, and we all know each other. We know who we are. And there are rare occasions when we'll descend upon the same location, whether it's training camp for the national team or tryouts, and you're walking amongst greats, who's the, the best quarterbacks, the best wide receivers, etc. And there's a good feeling to be a part of that community. And when I first learned about BIGG from James Howard, I agree, it was like getting entree into the Justice League. I'm a huge Wonder Woman fan, so I really appreciate that reference. And looking up to the Mr. Lonnie Johnson and Mr. Ken Johnson, and realizing that I've now entered into a space where I too can have that type of effect. And for me, I wish I had known as a kid that phase 10 was created by a black man. I wish I had known that the Super Soaker and the Nerf, I didn't know. I know, as if I had known as a little girl that these toys and these games that I loved and that I was playing with were actually invented by black people, I guarantee you I would have been on my 5th game right now, not just my 1st. It really is about exposure. It's about
100%.
It's about showing people what is possible. I didn't even know that it was a thing to think about. So for me, I want to get the word out to as many young kids, black, brown, purple, blue, polka dot, as possible, that they too have a game inside of them, that they too have a toy inside of them, and that there is a pathway to bringing that to fruition. And that when they do, the whole world benefits. Like, one of the greatest joys, I love scoring touchdowns. I love getting championship rings. I love winning. But one of the greatest feelings I've ever felt is the first time, the second, the 1,000th time I watched a kid, I watched a grandmother, I watched a family play Blitz Champz and have so much joy and so much fun and reminisce about it. There's nothing greater than that feeling, to know that something that was in my mind, I was able to bring to fruition on this earth, and it is replicating joy, it's spreading happiness, it's giving life. It's just wonderful.
Let me see those rings. Put them out there for 3 seconds.
These are just 2. Let me get them in the camera.
Nice.
Oh boy, I'm bad at it. There we go. Bam. Bam. Yeah. And then there's others, but you know.
Hey, so we got to talk about David Vonnor, because David put this together. We got to talk about Albert White. Mason, I'll have you talk about David. Talk about what David brings to the table. And Joffrey, I'll have you talk about Albert White, because getting the internet going. Joffrey, start with you. Let's talk about the internet, because I'm still stuck on, I didn't know African American marketing came all about the net. I didn't know about that.
Yeah. You know, I wasn't aware of Al until I met him at the BIGG event, but I knew about Network Solutions, because at the time that Network Solution came about, I was actually working in IT back in the 90s and heard about this company. I didn't know who started it, didn't know what their story was until they sold the company, which was interesting. But hearing him talk about the fact that these brothers and sisters were there at the foundation, they were the only company that bid on actually taking on the commercialization of the internet, bringing the World Wide Web to everyone. They were the company that started it. And to know that these brothers and sisters were there at the beginning to make that happen. You think about a simple thing like .com, right? Which we take for granted. Like, there's a thing that .com, it's an extension. There's .edu, .gov, etc. That these folks were there creating that, right? We use it all over the world now, but they created that stuff, and no one is really giving them the props or the accolades for what they were able to accomplish to get that going. You know, one of the things, so I mentioned that I was in IT at the time, and I started working, one of the last jobs I did in that company before I left was working on email. And so I had to figure out for our corporation how to get their address, and then how to actually build out the appliance that would provide email to the entire corporation. Getting that address came from Network Solutions, which is the brothers and sisters that started the whole thing, right? So Al, when I think about it, I just talked to him a couple of weeks ago about some work we're probably going to collaborate on. Al is amazing. He's thoughtful. He's deep. He understands this stuff at a really fundamental level. And that team that they put together was an all-star team that was able to make this happen. It's kind of mind-boggling to sit in a room with him and to hear all of the things that he's into and involved with. I mean, huge stuff that we'll hear about in the future and see in the future. But the man is fantastic. I don't know what more I can say about him, but it's amazing to be sitting next to him and hearing him talk about the role that they played in making this giant thing that we now take for granted possible.
And Mason, talk about David Vonnor really quickly, and then we're going to go to Helen and everybody's social media link. Go ahead.
All right, so I'll say this. So Vonnor and I met at Mattel a few years back, and at the time, we have a design center, and I was at the design center. I was one of very few of us, and I saw Vonnor. I saw this figure walking down the hall towards me, and I was like, "Wait, that's a black dude." And then I literally started running, like, you know, like chariots of fire. Like, I don't know this dude from anything, you know. And we hugged each other, and we just we met. And then, you know, David and I became fast friends. And then when I got introduced to James about the BIGG, David had left Mattel and was going on to do what he's doing with Nacelle and all the big stuff he's doing. I said, James, man, I got to introduce you to my homie David. Like, he's the one. He's the ace. Like, David is a icon and like one of the many unsaid icons and underknown icons around in the toy industry. And I'm just sad, like, honestly, as a person who helped, like, I've always believed in him. He believed in me. You know, you need people who believe in each other, like friends who see eye to eye, who can say things to each other that are, you know, equally harsh, equally loving. And David has always pushed me, and I believe I've pushed David a lot. And when we collaborated on BIGG, literally it was the culmination of so many conversations that he and I had just amongst ourselves. And then to find out that we would be able to come together in a format like BIGG and now lead to this. And I see all that David is doing and getting his accolades and getting his props, the just due props that he deserves. It makes me feel proud because, you know, I've you know, I'm his road dog. I've ride with him till the day we met, since the day we met till the day we go, and I'm just proud of him.
Helen, let's talk about your game and how people can go and purchase your game. This is important.
Okay. Well, you can purchase my board game through Etsy and also directly from me. If you go to jotitdown.com, then you will see my website. I want to just divert. Of course, I turned the word game into a digital game in 2020 when the pandemic hit, and I'm working on phase 2 right now to create my own platform. Right now, the digital game is on Play Store and also in the App Store. So it's both Android and Apple. You can download it. It's fun to play. It has many dimensions. But can I just backtrack, because I too am interested in trying to get more minorities into game creation and invention. And what I want to say is that when I had no idea that I would be doing this, but sometimes you have to take a leap of faith. And oftentimes we think that things have to be perfect. And I always say what you need to do is start. I self-published my board game and I started out that way. And I believe also Eddie also did self-publishing. So we need to go about bringing people of color into this arena and letting them know that you don't always have to have a whole lot of money in order to be creative and inventive. I started out I did have 2 people that acted as mentors to me. I knew nothing about the IT world, but I did tap into Stan Rucker, who had IT experience, and also Bill McCauley, who had IT experience. You know that I had none because I had trouble getting on here. But at any rate, I'm saying that I guess I too feel a passion to try to get more minorities into game development and game creation. And sometimes I feel like there are gatekeepers. And it's always interesting to me to hear, and I'm going to say this, and I hope that you take it in the right way. But when I'm in a conference and I hear white women talk about the fact that there's a glass ceiling, because game creation is predominantly a white male industry. But when I hear white females talk about the glass ceiling, and I'm thinking, I can't even get into the door. I would love to see the ceiling.
Amen.
And
Amen.
I think that there are enough change agents out there to make it happen. And that's what I want to say. Sometimes you just need to start, and people will show up and resources will show up. You have to start and you have to ask for help. Yeah. I know.
All right.
May I add something to that real quick? I'd like to add something.
Real quick, go ahead.
So here's the thing. I think that Helen is exactly right, that there are gatekeepers, but I'd like to talk about something that we call, like, I call the Wakanda Effect. Meaning, if you look at it, when Black Panther came out, it automatically became one of the highest grossing movies ever. And why was it? Because it was about Black authenticity, Black futurism, Black excellence, all the things that we talk about on this call, and all the things that all of you have exuded in your lives. But what the industry started seeing was like, wow, that not only is there a market there, but there is talent there. And so now it's imperative that we push the envelope, Helen. Like you were saying, like, you want to get in the door. Yeah, and as do all of us. We don't even know what the ceiling was like if you're not in the building. Yes. And I think now there's more of a appetite. And actually, and you know, sometimes the appetite is because of it might be self-serving for those who are in powers that may be. Because, you know, not everything has to be done from, if you have whole power, you're not going to do everything just because it's the right thing to do. There's actually what's in it for me there. You know what I'm saying? And so, but now we have to look at Black talent. We have to look at underrepresented talent. And I think that the eye has shifted there because of the things that you have done, the things that Adrienne has done, the things that Chuck had done. And the things that Al and Elliot and Dave and James Howard, like, and Dr. Lonnie. These things are now on the table of conversation in the rooms where access is granted.
Mm-hmm. And with that, Mason, I'm going to end it because I'm going to bring you back later. So I got to do this. Everybody's got a great story to tell. This is the perfect platform to tell it on movie reviews and more. And the house that you guys are talking about, the door and the ceiling, I'm blowing that up with Dreamweaver Artist Ranch with what we're creating. We're going to all be invited to the ranch, and your wares going to be showcased on our property. That's the one thing that's going to be doing. So talking about building the house, we're building our own small little country. How do you like that? Yeah. So like I said, I got to thank everybody with that. Got to thank David Vonnor, Dr. Lonnie Jant, Albert White, everybody on this panel, Nonstop, Rachel Roberts, and Roxy. And I always say this, have a good night tonight, a better day tomorrow. And if you see someone without a smile, please give them one of yours because the world needs it. I'm Brian Sebastian. This is Movie Reviews and More. We'll see you next week.
Thank you.